What if one impulsive decision could unravel the deepest parts of your heart? I'm Emily, a 38-year-old single mom, and this is the story of how a wild escape to a sun-drenched Greek island changed everything between me and my son, Liam. It's not just a vacation. It's a journey that started with a broken family and led to a bond one never saw coming. The ink on the divorce papers was barely dry when I made the call. My ex-husband's betrayal had torn our family apart, and I wasn't about to let his lies suffocate us. Liam, my 16-year-old son, was retreating into himself, quiet, shy, his sketchbook his only outlet. I couldn't watch him fade away. So, I booked us tickets to Crete, a rugged Greek island where the beaches were untamed and the crowds were nowhere to be found. It was our chance to rebuild, to find something new. We landed in Heraklion under a scorching September sky, the air buzzing with salt and wild thyme. Our rental was a weathered villa perched on a cliff above the Libyan Sea, miles from the tourist chaos. Liam was silent on the drive, his earbuds in, his sketchbook clutched tight. I didn't push. I knew the divorce had hit him hard, and I was determined to give him space to heal. Our first day was a whirlwind of settling in. The villa was all whitewashed walls and creaky wooden floors, with a terrace that overlooked a sea that shimmered like liquid gold at sunset. Liam was hesitant about everything, unpacking, eating the local bread I bought, even stepping outside. He'd always been shy, but the divorce had made him shrink further into his shell. I kept my tone light, teasing him about the lizards darting across the terrace. "Think they're guarding the place?" I asked. He gave me a half smile, and I took it as a win that we didn't waste time. The next morning, I dragged Liam out to explore. "We're not here to sit inside," I said, tossing him a water bottle. We drove to a secluded beach called Betrayal, a hidden gem where a river met the sea, framed by palm trees and towering cliffs. The hike down was steep, the path winding through scrubby hills, and Liam grumbled the whole way. But when we reached the shore, his eyes widened. The water was turquoise, the sand golden, and there wasn't a soul in sight. "Okay, this is pretty cool," he admitted, kicking off his shoes. Liam hesitated at the water's edge, his shoulders tense, like he was afraid of being watched. I waded in first, splashing him playfully. "Come on, it's just us and the crabs," I called. He rolled his eyes but followed, sticking close. We swam out to a shallow sandbar, the water warm and clear, and I started making up stories about pirate ships that once anchored in the cove. Liam snorted but added his own twist, a sea monster guarding a sunken treasure. It was the first time I'd heard him play along in months, and my heart leapt. That afternoon, we stumbled on a local market in a nearby village. The stalls were bursting with color, olives, honey, handmade jewelry. I haggled for a leather bracelet, and Liam, to my surprise, picked out a small carved wooden boat. "For the pirates," he said, his voice shy but warm. We ate fresh gyros under a fig tree, the juice dripping down our chins, and laughed when a stray cat tried to steal Liam's food. For a moment, it felt like we were us again, not just a mom and son scarred by a broken home. The days became a blur of adventure. We rented kayaks one morning, paddling along the coast to a hidden cave where the water glowed blue. Liam was nervous at first, his paddle wobbling, but I coached him through it, cheering when he got the hang of it. "You're a natural," I shouted over the waves. He grinned, a real grin, and I memorized the way his face lit up. Inside the cave, we floated in silence, the only sound the drip of water from stalactites. "This is like another world," Liam whispered, and I nodded, feeling the same awe. Our talk started to shift. One evening, after a long day hiking to a cliffside monastery, we sat on the villa's terrace, the stars blazing above us. I told him about my dreams as a kid, to travel, to paint, to live somewhere wild. He listened, his sketchbook open, doodling the cliffs we'd seen. "What about you?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "I want to make something real, like art that means something." It was the most he'd shared in years, and I felt a door opening between us. Liam's shyness didn't vanish, but it softened. He'd still stick close when we swam, his eyes scanning for strangers, but he'd laugh when I splashed him or race me to shore. One day, we found a tiny cove so remote it felt like we discovered it. We built a sandcastle, something we hadn't done since he was 5, complete with a moat and driftwood towers. "This is our kingdom," I declared, and Liam added a seashell flag, his face bright with pride. We sat there until the tide came in, watching our creation dissolve, and he leaned against me, just for a second. It was a small gesture, but it felt like everything. That night, we tried cooking cleftico, a lamb dish we'd eaten at a taverna. The kitchen was chaos, spices everywhere, the oven too hot, but we laughed through it, Liam teasing me for burning the potatoes. Over dinner, he asked why I'd chosen Crete. I told him I wanted a place where we could be free, where we didn't have to carry his dad's betrayal. He nodded, his eyes distant, and I knew he was wrestling with his own pain. "I'm glad it's just us," he said quietly, and I reached for his hand, squeezing it. By the end of the first week, Liam was different, not outgoing but lighter. He'd sketch the sea while I read, or point out a cool rock formation on our hikes. He'd linger when we talked, not bolt to his room. I felt like I was rediscovering my son, and it filled me with hope. But there was something else, too, a subtle shift I didn't fully grasp. Liam would watch me sometimes, his gaze thoughtful, like he was seeing me in a new way. I thought it was just gratitude, or maybe the divorce, making him cling to me. I didn't yet understand how our adventures were weaving us closer, setting the stage for something deeper. As we packed for another day of exploring, Liam handed me a sketch, a rough drawing of me laughing by the sea. "It's not done," he mumbled, blushing. I hugged him, my heart full, unaware of how much our bond was about to grow. The second week in Crete hit us like a wave, pulling us deeper into the island's rhythm. Liam and I had found our stride, exploring hidden beaches, kayaking through glowing caves, laughing over burnt dinners. He was still shy, always scanning for strangers, but he was opening up, his smiles more frequent, his sketches more vibrant. I thought we were rebuilding piece by piece. I didn't yet see how the island was weaving us into something more complicated. Our days were packed with adventure. One morning, we rented a small motorboat to explore the coastline, the wind whipping our hair as we sped toward a cluster of tiny islets. Liam, usually nervous about anything new, took the helm after I showed him how, his hands steady on the wheel. "You're a pirate captain now," I shouted over the engine, and he laughed, a sound that echoed over the waves. We anchored at a deserted cove, the water so clear we could see fish darting below. Liam hesitated as always before swimming, but I dove in first, calling for him to follow. He did, staying close, his eyes bright with a mix of nerves and excitement. That cove became our sanctuary. We spent hours there, floating in the warm sea, trading stories about mythical creatures we'd invented on our first trip to Betrayal. Liam's imagination was wilder than I'd realized. He spun a tale about a sea goddess who guarded the islets, her voice in the waves. I added my own twist, saying she granted wishes to those who swam at dusk. "What would you wish for?" I asked, treading water beside him. He looked at me, his expression soft, and said, "For this to last." My throat tightened, and I splashed him to lighten the mood, but his words lingered. Back at the villa, our evenings were intimate in a way I hadn't anticipated. We'd cook together, calamari one night, stuffed tomatoes the next, our shoulders brushing in the tiny kitchen. Liam would tease me about my knife skills, and I'd fire back about his obsession with adding too much garlic. One night, as we sat on the terrace with a plate of baklava, the stars above us like a spilled galaxy, he reached for my hand. It was brief, his fingers warm against mine, but it felt different. Not just a son's affection, but something heavier. I pulled back gently, laughing about the sticky honey on my fingers, but my heart raced. I told myself it was nothing, just the closeness of our trip. The next day, we hiked to a waterfall tucked in a gorge, the path steep and overgrown. Liam led the way, more confident now, pointing out wild herbs and strange rocks. At the falls, the water roared into a deep pool, mist rising like a veil. I stripped to my swimsuit and jumped in, the cold shocking my skin. Liam hesitated, his cheeks red, but I coaxed him in, splashing him from below. We swam to a flat rock in the center, lying side by side to dry in the sun. His arm brushed mine, and he didn't move away. The air felt charged, his silence heavy. "You okay?" I asked, propping up on an elbow. He nodded, his eyes flicking to mine, then away. "Just really happy," he said, his voice low. I smiled, but unease stirred in me. His gaze lingered too long, too often. That night, we found a local festival in a nearby village. Music, dancing, tables groaning with food. Liam was shy at first, sticking to my side as we navigated the crowd. I pulled him into a circle dance, laughing as we stumbled through the steps. His hand gripped mine tightly, his face flushed from the wine we'd shared, just a sip for him. Later, we sat under a string of lanterns, sharing a plate of lucumades. He leaned closer, his shoulder against mine, and told me about a dream he'd had, a life where we never left Crete, just the two of us. "Sounds like paradise," I said lightly, but his intensity unnerved me. I changed the subject, pointing out a fire juggler, but the moment clung to me. Our adventures continued, each one pulling us closer. We snorkeled in a bay filled with colorful fish, Liam's excitement bubbling over as he pointed out a sea turtle. We climbed a rocky hill to an ancient ruin, where he sketched the crumbling columns while I read aloud from a guidebook. At night, we'd sit on the villa's roof, wrapped in blankets, talking about everything: his art, my old dreams, the future. He'd ask questions that felt too personal, like whether I'd ever remarry, or if I missed being close to someone. I'd deflect, but his curiosity was relentless, his eyes searching mine. One afternoon, we returned to our favorite cove, the one we'd claimed as ours. The sun was low, painting the cliffs gold. We swam out to a shallow cave, the water cool and dark. Inside, we sat on a ledge, our legs dangling in the sea. Liam was quiet, his shoulder brushing mine. "Mom," he said suddenly, "you're different here. Freer." I laughed, saying it was just the island, but he shook his head. "No, it's you. I see you now." His voice was soft, almost reverent, and I felt a flush creep up my neck. I stood, splashing him to break the tension, but his words echoed in my mind. Back at the villa, things felt closer. He'd sit nearer when we ate, his knee grazing mine under the table. He'd linger when he hugged me goodnight, his arms tight for a second too long. I told myself it was the divorce, his need for reassurance, but doubt gnawed at me. One night, as we watched a storm roll in from the terrace, lightning cracking over the sea, he rested his head on my shoulder. "I don't want to go back," he whispered. I stroked his hair, my heart aching, but a part of me wondered if he meant more than the island. By the end of the second week, our bond was undeniable, but it was shifting into something I couldn't name. Liam was still my shy, sensitive son, but there was a new intensity in him, a way he looked at me, a neediness in his touch. I felt it too, the pull to be close, to protect him, to keep him near. But it was more than that, and it scared me. I pushed the thoughts away, focusing on our adventures, but they kept creeping back. As we packed for a final day trip, a boat ride to a remote island, I caught Liam watching me, his sketchbook open to a drawing of us swimming together, our figures intertwined in the water. "It's beautiful," I said, my voice catching. He smiled, but his eyes held something deeper, something I wasn't ready to face. I didn't know yet how the next few days would force me to confront it. The third week in Crete felt like a dream we were both reluctant to wake from. Liam and I had woven a world of our own, kayaking through turquoise bays, dancing at village festivals, sketching under starlit skies. His shyness had softened, replaced by a warmth that drew us closer, but there was an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. His lingering glances, the way his hand brushed mine too often, the weight in his words when he spoke of never leaving, it stirred a mix of love and unease. I told myself it was just the island, the divorce, the intensity of being each other's everything. I was wrong. Our final days were packed with plans. We'd chartered a boat to Spinalonga, A tiny island with a haunting history, a former leper colony, now a crumbling relic. The morning was crisp, the sea glassy as we set out, Liam at my side, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. He was quieter than usual, his eyes distant, but he smiled when I teased him about being seasick. "I'm fine, Mom," he said, his voice soft. "Just thinking." I didn't press, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing beneath his calm. Spinalonga was eerie, its stone walls whispering of forgotten lives. We wandered the narrow streets, Liam sketching the decayed buildings while I read from a guidebook about the island's past. At one point, he stopped, staring at a rusted gate. "Do you think people here felt trapped?" he asked, his tone strange. I shrugged, saying they probably found ways to cope. He nodded, but his gaze lingered on me, intense, almost searching. I brushed it off, suggesting we explore the island's cliffs. That afternoon, we found a secluded beach on Spinalonga's far side, a crescent of pebbles framed by jagged rocks. We swam in silence, the water cool and deep, the only sound our breaths and the lapping waves. Liam stayed close as always, his shoulder brushing mine as we floated. "You ever feel like you're someone else here?" he asked suddenly, his voice low. I laughed, thinking he meant the island's magic. "Sure, like I'm a pirate queen." He didn't smile. "No, I mean, like you're more than just Mom." My stomach twisted, but I splashed him, changing the subject. His words clung to me, sharp and unsettling. Back at the villa, the tension grew. Liam was attentive, too attentive. He'd sit close when we ate, his knee grazing mine, his eyes following me when he thought I wasn't looking. One night, as we cooked Dakos, he reached past me for a knife, his hand lingering on my arm. "You're beautiful here," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. I froze, my heart pounding, and forced a laugh. "It's just the tan," I said, turning away. But the air felt charged, and I couldn't shake the feeling that our bond was crossing a line I didn't understand. The next day, we hiked to a remote cave said to house ancient Minoan ruins. The path was treacherous, winding through cliffs, but Liam was fearless, leading the way with a confidence I hadn't seen before. Inside the cave, the air was cool, the walls etched with faded symbols. Liam traced one with his finger, a spiral that seemed to pulse in the dim light. "They say these were for rituals," he said, his voice echoing, "to connect with something bigger." I nodded, but his intensity unnerved me. He turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Mom, what if we're connected like that? More than we know?" I laughed nervously, saying we were just close, but his expression didn't waver. That night, everything changed. We were on the villa's roof, wrapped in blankets, the Milky Way sprawling above us. Liam was quiet, his sketchbook open to a drawing of us in the cave, our figures intertwined with the Minoan spirals. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice trembling. My heart sank, fearing what he might confess, something about his feelings, something that would shatter our delicate balance. But what he said was stranger, impossible. "Mom, I'm not just your son." He swallowed, his eyes locked on mine. "I've been having dreams since we got here. Memories that aren't mine. Of this island, thousands of years ago. You and me, but different. Like we were something else." I stared, my mind reeling. "Liam, it's just the island, the stories we've been telling." He cut me off, his voice urgent. "No. I found something in the cave today. A stone, carved with our initials, E and L. It was old, Mom. Ancient." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he pulled the stone from his pocket. It was small, worn, but the letters were clear, etched in a script that matched the cave symbols. My breath caught. "This is crazy," I whispered, but a chill ran through me. Liam's eyes were wild. "I think we're connected, Mom. Not just now, but always. Like we've been here before, together in another life." I wanted to dismiss it, to say it was the divorce, his imagination, the island's myths. But the stone felt heavy in my hand, and flashes came, images of sunlit cliffs, of Liam's face but older, of a bond that wasn't just maternal. I shook my head, my voice shaking. This isn't real, Liam. It's just us healing. But he leaned closer, his hand on mine, his voice a whisper. What if it's more? What if we're meant to be this close, always? The world tilted. I pulled back, my heart racing, but the stone burned in my palm. That night, I couldn't sleep, the cave's spirals dancing in my mind. The next day, we returned to the cave, driven by a need I couldn't explain. Inside, we found more, carvings of two figures, a woman and a man, their hands joined, spirals circling them. Liam's voice was steady now. It's us, Mom. We were here, maybe as priestess and guardian, maybe something else. Crete's showing us. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was undeniable. The stone, the carvings, the dreams I'd started having too, of rituals under starlight, of Liam's voice calling me by another name. Our bond wasn't just close, it was ancient, cosmic, a thread woven through time. We weren't just mother and son. We were souls tethered across centuries, drawn back to Crete to remember. As we stood in the cave, the truth settled over us. Liam took my hand, not as a son, but as a partner in this strange, eternal dance. We don't have to be afraid, he said. I nodded, tears in my eyes, knowing we'd leave Crete changed, our lives now a quest to understand our shared past. The island had given us not just healing, but a mystery, a bond that transcended time, binding us forever in ways no one could explain.